This is Magog, and we are covering UFC 168, starting with points of interest on Anderson Silva versus Chris Weidman. The fight begins relatively slow before Chris Weidman is able to close the distance around 30 seconds into the fight and take Anderson Silva down. Now, I went back to go study the takedown itself, and I noticed that it's actually not that explosive of a takedown. It's not one of those great balanced takedowns that you see out of a John Bones Jones or George St. Pierre, nor is it a driving shot like you'd get out of Mark Coleman or Josh Koscheck. I went back to go study the Vitor Belfort Anderson Silva fight to see if I really saw any difference, and I noticed that Vitor actually hit his takedown off a failed head kick of Anderson Silva's. A point of interest is that Vitor Belfort actually held down Anderson Silva for a total of 3 seconds, and Chris Weidman's first takedown, he held him down for a total of 11. Now at 350, the most important pivotal part of the fight happens where Anderson Silva is able to actually use his Muay Thai plum to break out of being stalled against the cage, and he's actually landing some good knees against Chris Weidman until Chris Weidman comes back and drops Anderson Silva. Now this is the most important part about this. Anderson is in his absolute best possible situation he could have hoped for. He has the Thai plum. He's doing significant damage. At this point, you can no longer simply say Anderson Silva never got into this fight or never got to implement anything that he was good at. Now, some of the questions I have as a result of this fight include, does Chris Weidman's ground and pound lack some of the power of his stand-up, or is Anderson Silva simply off balance? The shots Chris landed on the ground seem to be every bit the force that dropped Anderson Silva in the first place. For me, the major difference in this fight was the reach and speed. Anderson Silva had 77 inches of reach. Chris Weidman had 78. Not enough to give Chris a huge advantage, but Anderson was not prevented to have a huge advantage. Keep in mind, Vitor only had 74 inches of reach, and we've seen Nick Diaz dominate with as little as 3 inches of reach advantage. That's worth taking note of, seeing as how Vitor is fighting Chris next. In the Barnett-Travis Browne fight, we basically see the script being flipped, with Travis Browne being the striker and Josh Barnett being the wrestler, only that youth, this time, and speed are on Travis Browne's side. Josh becomes hurt after a knee in the clinch by Travis Browne. He subsequently has one of his arms go limp, and that's when I assume that he went unconscious up against the cage, failing to get the takedown against Browne, and the fight is subsequently stopped. Bobby Voelker comes up short in his fight against Payan, in what should have probably been for his career. Dana White seemed to be impressed with Bobby Voelker's ability to take damage. In the long run, I don't feel he's really doing him any favors by letting him take a beating.